And we are ready to start. Uh, Welcome to the Factors.ai podcast. In this podcast, we talk to senior leaders, CXOs, and founders of B2B SaaS and marketing companies. And in this special podcast, we have Jen, who is one of the best sales leaders for early stage companies, one of the best sales consultants for early stage companies I have come across. And she runs Jellyfish. And one of the primary agendas of Jellyfish is helping global companies break into the US market. And that is the biggest market. Almost every single B2B SaaS company has a US strategy. And in this podcast, we would be learning from her on what are the things which we need to do to break into the US market, what are the mistakes early stage companies do, more details on early stage sales, and what do you do before marketing kicks up. That's what we are trying to learn here. Hey, Jen, welcome here. You have been a friend of ours and an advisor and an investor in us. Very, 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 very happy and excited to have you on our podcast and looking forward to learn from you as always, and also make sure that we share the learnings to the rest of our community as well so that they can also benefit from that. Welcome, Jen.
Shri, it's amazing to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks a lot, Jen. Jen, I have I have known you or actually worked with you for almost 3 years now, since almost the time when we started up, and I have known your journey in the last 3 years. But what I'd also like to learn is, like, how did the idea of Jellyfish happen? How did you see that opportunity in the market, and how did you end up starting up with Jellyfish?
Yeah, it's a interesting story. So Justin and I, my co-founder Justin, that's where the double J's come from. We both met at a previous employer, a YC backed startup called The Muse, and then before that, I was at a ed tech company called General Assembly, which was a darling in the early days, 2004, 2014, 2015. So they were one of kind of the very first New York City startups to really have strong traction and an amazing exit. And I was always that first or second sales hire that they brought in on the enterprise side, right? So they started out either B2C, or they were starting out at SMB, and they hired me and Justin, to come in to build out the enterprise division, right? Go out and sell to enterprise clients. And while the first time I did it, I said, okay, yeah, that sounds great. I'll go out and do that. How hard could that be, right? Just go out, get some meetings, learn, and bring that back to headquarters. Well, it turned out without any level of a vision constraints or the founder, it is near impossible. So in my first role at General Assembly, I went off on my own for the first month or two and then realized, what am I doing? I am literally wandering meeting from meeting, trying to figure out what the market wants, with no vision, no constraints except what we were previously doing down market. And I realized, oh my God, I need the founder to be deeply involved in this process with me, because what's the vision of where we want to eventually take this? That was above my pay grade. So I would bring the founder in and say, listen, we're going to have this meeting. I need you here. I will go super deep into where they're potentially prioritizing some problems, but like, what are the one or two things we want to solve for them? And like, use that as the guardrails or the constraints. And what I realized in both of these, full-time positions is the first sales hire is not set up for success, right? Because they usually are not given a plan. They're usually taught to go out and get meetings with this type of customer and go figure out what they want. But without having a vision on the problems that I think they're facing, I don't even know how to run these meetings. So we were constantly pulling in the founder in the early days to help us constrain and focus where those problems potentially lived. And I was like, wait a second, this might be a broader market problem. And sure enough, that insight allowed us to stumble into launching Jellyfish, which we originally launched to support US seed stage companies, and then quickly realized our value proposition was even stronger in the international markets, because there's a lot more wandering that happens then when you don't have US US context or US commercial experience. So I'll pause there. I know that a little bit of a roundabout answer.
I mean, you saw the problem firsthand when you were the early sales hire, and then
Yeah,
started off with it for US sales companies, and then international. So international obviously means across countries and nations which are trying to break into the US market. But in this regard, uh, what was the specific space or stage at which you enter? Is it something like when the company is a couple of
enter
million
the
dollars
US.
in revenue, or like pre-revenue or
Yep,
pre-product?
yep,
When is the time when you actually enter?
yep. So I think the past 2 years have created a lot of misconceptions
Mhm.
about US expansion. So Shri, we got to work with you before zero interest rates was really a uh, you know, that became really the bubble that we saw. But there's two ways to think about US expansion. Are you building for the US market on day one? And is that your sole focus, right? Well, at that point, pre-seed is important to spend
Mhm.
time here and understand the US, right? If that's where who you're building for. If you're building for your local market first, okay, wait until you have some level of product market fit there. Because trying to serve two distinct markets at the same time,
Mhm.
I mean, let alone it's hard enough to find product market fit in one market, let alone two. So, and those are two different ICPs as well, or ideal customer profiles. So I usually suggest if you're building for the US market on day one, that's an easy answer. It's as early as you can. If
Mhm.
you're building for the US market as like the secondary market that you will eventually want to move into after your local market, my God, it's expensive to experiment in the US, right? Between time, the founder needs to be fully dedicated to it. I would say that usually comes in, you know, in a more mature seed, not like there's a lot of people raising seed that are really more pre-seed. So I would say your proper seed or even maybe a proper A. Um,
Okay.
because US expansion is, and Shri, we could talk about this directly. It is not easy, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of invalidation that happens. The US market is fickle. They are constantly being sold to from various alternatives. So you need to be fully prepared and fully dedicated to this market
Mhm.
before you make any leap or tip your toes in.
Actually, there was one interesting point which you mentioned about you should have product market fit for US. So you might have got product market fit in some other country or a region or a segment, but if you're coming to US, you have to get product market fit in US.
Yep.
How different it is? Why is it different? Why, as a market expansion into US or PMF in US itself is very, very different?
Yep. So, firstly, if you're an international company, that's a headwind, right? Why is a US business going to trust someone that is not physically based here or even has customers here yet, right? Like you have to fight through that inertia, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes that's easier than others, right? If you're entering a very crowded market, that becomes harder. If you're entering a more budding market where there's not many alternatives, it becomes a little bit easier, right? For the obvious reasons. Um, but product market fit in the US in its true form, like true product market fit, not momentum investing product market fit where, people were just throwing money at anyone that was able to get a customer. True proper product market fit where you are getting a incredible amount of inbound demand. You're generating over $1 million in ARR. That could take 2+ years, right? Like, before like 2021, it was usually a 18 to 24-month process, right? Because
Yeah.
it takes a lot of refinement to get there, right? It's experiment after experiment. It's chiseling away at the sculpture. It's refining it. It's how precise are you and
Mhm.
where is that market demand? And sometimes it takes time to build market demand because they might be interested in solving it tomorrow, but maybe not today. So, true product market fit in its mature essence
Mhm.
is usually a 2-year sprint. And I think there is this gross misconception that it can be done in 3 months or 6 months, right? And I have never seen a startup that isn't fueled by super low interest rates achieve product market fit in under 90 days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 190 days, I don't think I mean, it's very, very difficult even to land in and land a couple of customers interesting, leave alone $1 million plus in terms of run rate, feeling
Yeah.
of that inbound. Unless you have experimented and failed many times,
Yes.
that's more of a
That's the only
personal
way.
experience. But
When
the
people try and time box product market fit, they'll say, "We need to get this done in 6 months." And I'm like, "You have no control over the time of how long it takes to get to product market fit." Obviously, you wanna do that as fast as possible, but, um,
Mhm,
it still takes I mean, to generate $1 million in ARR, right?
mhm,
Most of that's gonna come from outbound because you don't really have brand equity here yet in most cases, right? So,
mhm.
that's minimum 18 months.
And with the product and also the product evolving, or in
You
terms of
got
what
it.
you have to change, both in terms of
Churn, yep,
the use cases, churn, and others. Interesting. You mentioned a very important thing in terms of like the founder being invested and the founder being part of the whole journey and
yep,
vision and getting through the whole bring the product live into that market in this case. What are the kind of best practices you found good founders do? I mean, you would have worked with more than 100 plus founders across the
yeah,
board. You have seen so many companies maybe over the last 3 4 years, right from the time when they wouldn't
yep,
have had product market fit to the
yep,
time when they are more than a couple of $1 million in revenue. If you can help us understand, like, what is the process you
yep,
have seen, what are the best practices you have seen some of the good founders follow, maybe with some examples or
yep,
even no name examples, so that we
yep,
can kind of
yep.
associate with it.
So the best founders, right? Or the second or third time founders, because usually it's the second or third time founders that end up
Mhm.
being the best founder
Mhm.
because they made all the mistakes the first time around. So I like to say, like, the second and third time founders that we work with, okay, they understand the importance of constraints and vision testing.
Mhm.
A lot of first time founders will come to us and say, "Hey, we want to go speak to customers." We said, "Great. What do you want to speak to them about?" "I want to understand their problems." Okay,
Mhm.
you need to have some level of idea about what problems they are facing. Otherwise, having a conversation with someone without constraints or guardrails or assumptions
Mhm.
will lead a zero because you're just going to collect a lot of noise, right? If you ask me today what keeps me up at night, I'm going to give you a different answer next Monday, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm dealing with a different fire drill, right? If you ask me, would I use this? I'll probably be nice and say, sure, right? If you
Mhm.
ask me, some of these high level questions that everyone wants to ask because they don't have vision they're testing, right? They fall into trap of these like what I call macro um, discussion points. That doesn't give you deep insight. Anyone can have that conversation, right?
Mhm.
So when you have a conversation with a customer, it needs to be a conversation that no one else is having with them because that's the only way you're going to unearth deep insight,
Mhm.
right? If I said, "Hey, is solving X problem in 7 days really important to you?" Right? And I put a framing around 7 days and they say, "You know what? As long as it can be done in 5 days, that's okay." Great. Why is 5 days important? Now that allows me to go deeper and deeper and deeper than someone that's just having a generic open-ended conversation. So many founders, specifically international founders, will come into the US market and wander. They'll put their suitcase down in San Francisco, they'll take a bunch of first meetings, they'll have a bunch of meetings, and then after 30 days, you ask them, "What did you learn?" And they'll say, "Oh, so and so wanted to get on a demo call." Great, what did you learn? Go deeper. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, there's no real depth to their understanding or the experiments that they're running, and they get nowhere. Right? And I always tell founders, if it was as easy as having a conversation in an open-ended conversation, like what keeps you up at night, okay, everyone could do this. Right? It's the only thing that separates you from the next person is the vision you have and allowing that vision to allow you to go deeper and deeper into these conversations. Otherwise, someone can
So,
build this overnight.
makes sense. So one thing which I get is, of course, the having the vision, and that's something which each and every founder, and that's the problem which they want to solve for, and that's something which they want to go after, whether it will be $100 million revenue company or a $1 billion revenue
Yep.
company. That's something which they go after, and in a sense, it's up to each founder's self-realization and introspection to get that out. But after that, you made a nice point around designing a well-designed experiment, or
Yep.
like what is a well design, and that's some. Can you go a little deeper on
Yeah,
that? What
of
is
course.
actually a well-designed experiment?
Yep.
What
So
does it mean?
a well-designed experiment firstly is written down. It is on a piece of paper that you can hold yourself accountable to. your co-founder can hold you accountable to, your team can hold you accountable. There are clear instructions around what everyone is marching towards, right? Go to market and product market fit is a team sport. It needs to be written down. Okay. So firstly, you have to answer the who. Who do you want to serve? Who do you want to go out and learn from? Okay. Who do you believe is passionate about this? Let's just start with the who. Okay. The second question is the why. Why do they care? Okay. Now, you can write down 3 or 4 reasons why they care. In fact, you might have 10 reasons why they care, right? But usually those 10 bubble up into usually 3 or 4
Are they
reasons, right?
reasons or are they assumptions?
They're assumptions. Good point. They're assumptions, meaning I believe X is unable to achieve Y because of Z, right? What are they unable to achieve and why do they care? Right? What is preventing them from growing? What is preventing them from cost savings? What is preventing them from moving faster? What is preventing them from further de-risking X? Right? Like, what is that thing and why do they care? Right? So many people will say, oh, they want to move faster. Why? Why do they want to move faster? What's at risk if they don't move faster? And they can't answer that. So I'm like, is that really an assumption? And also, move faster means something at every different organization. So put constraints around that. I believe that marketers want to be able to go from 30 days to 10 days to increase revenue or regarding whatever it be, right? Okay, 7 days is testable. 7 days means the same thing to you, to me, to anyone else we go out and interview. But if I said they want to move faster, you're going to get different answers for every single person because move faster means something different to everyone. It's not a self-evident term. So when you are putting down assumptions, make sure those assumptions are self-evident so that you can compare apples to apples, so that you can unlock repeatable themes, right? If you're having different conversations with everyone, there's no consistency. Consistency is what allows you to unlock repeatability. So in writing down these assumptions, make sure they are self-evident. One of them needs to be proven true in order for this whole thing to work. So you might invalidate everything. That's okay. Where is the rejection redirecting you? Okay. And most importantly, every conversation you have, create guardrails around the questions you are asking them. Okay. Because those questions need to be held consistent from conversation to conversation. Otherwise, you will never unlock repeatable themes. So when you go out and have conversations with the market, make sure you're having the same type of conversation. Otherwise, you're going to, again, unearth different conversations with everyone, which yields nothing. It goes back to this idea of wandering. So when you write it down on paper, when it's documented, when people can poke and prod at it and can put you under a microscope, yes, it's daunting. Yes, it's nervous, but like that's what gets you ahead.
Got it. So interesting. You made a very important point around. I write down 10 assumptions. Only one has to work. I have to invalidate or try invalidating the remaining 10.
Correct.
Remaining 9 of them. How does that work? I mean, because generally, if the assumptions get invalidated, you would feel kind of like you might have to ditch that idea and go after some other idea or like go around this thing. How does the invalidating assumptions as the primary goal actually fit into the whole
So
discovery part?
most of your vision, if you're doing it properly, will be invalidated, right? Why? No founder's initial vision day one really stands a chance with the market, right? Because you have to take the market reality today and ensure it aligns with your vision. Well, there's 0% chance that you're going to be 50% of the time correct, right? It's usually a very small piece of your vision will be proven true. Also, if you're not invalidating, you are not going deep enough, or you're bringing way too much bias into the equation, right? Actually, in our engagement, I'll let you speak to it. Did you see more invalidation or validation in the first time we went out to market, and
No,
why?
I saw a lot of invalidations. I was a little kind of worried, but
Yep.
later when we dug deeper, from my own experience, and maybe you can talk to about it as well, where
Yeah.
like it's like maybe I would say maybe I was naive as a founder, thinking all these are problems which exist. When you go and question, you can say like, oh,
Yep.
there are alternatives, or there is a reason why this is not a problem. This is not a burning problem, or
Correct.
something of that
Yep.
reason. And then we found the sliver point of like maybe one where like nobody has solved for, but now it is emerging as a problem because
Yep.
of whatever reasons, because of like, okay, more B2B SaaS companies are coming through, more funding is coming through, more people are investing in marketing. So when, because of either because of the time, because of either the market has changed, or because of some very particular reason which nobody solved for it until now because they didn't have the technology or the team or the kind of like even the server infrastructure or something like that at that point in time. Hence, that sliver is there. That's something which we found. But is this true for almost every single company which goes through, or is it something which?
No, I would say the more invalidation we do, that means
Mhm.
the deeper your assumptions were.
Okay.
So that is a very healthy, good thing. More
Mhm.
importantly, if you're not invalidating a lot, that means you're still here,
Mhm.
right? We wanted to turn you into a laser because it being specific is
Mhm.
the only thing that separates you from anyone else, right? Being
Got it.
specific on the problem you solve. So when we say invalidation, invalidation is such a healthy, important aspect to this that a lot of founders are allergic to because they think they need to be correct. Your job is not to know, it's to question, right? If every
Mhm.
founder started out and was like, "Oh, I know this to be true," that's why they never get to product market fit, right?
Mhm.
Like if you have to question everything and you have to go deeper because if you're questioning why something is validated, you're going to get a deeper insight than anyone else, which will allow you to be more specific than anyone else. This is the secret sauce, right? It is be specific, unearth a deep insight that no one else has been able to ask because they didn't have the vision for it. That's the only way to separate everyone else, right? It creates the entire business model. So
Got it.
so many like this is like where where the ecosystem is like that education isn't fully there yet. Like everyone knows the importance of finding their wedge, but they don't understand why a wedge is so important, right?
Mhm.
They're like, oh, I need to get here, but I really don't know why I need to get here, but I'm just going to get here. And the
Mhm.
answer is you don't have the resources to go out and serve anyone. And the only way to separate you from the pack is to be able to be specific.
Got it. But one thing is like when you make assumptions and when you are invalidating, sometimes you might validate or invalidate truisms. And
Truisms, yep.
for founders, it will look like, yeah, this is there and this is a reason, but actually it's not. And how do you avoid it when you go through the customer discovery?
How do you avoid truisms?
Yeah.
That's all part of the design of the experiment. It's hard. Designing assumptions are very hard, right? But
Mhm.
a truism is something that we know, of course, the answer is yes. For example,
I mean, something I want to reduce cost. I want to increase revenue.
I want more leads. Correct.
Yeah.
I want to reduce costs. I want more leads. I want to de-risk um the
Security.
ability to get hacked. Like, of course. Yes, of course. Like, but how does that give you a deeper insight beyond a yes? It
Mhm.
doesn't. Right. And when you validate a truism or you spend time at truisms because you're scared of going deeper,
Mhm.
again, it will yield no new insight or no unique insight to fuel everything else. You'll just be stuck in the pack.
Got it. Well, that's, I think it would really come into the designing the experiment. How much time does it take to design the experiment when you work with
Yeah,
founders?
when we work with you, when we worked with you or when we work with any founder, it's usually about 2 weeks, right?
Two
They
weeks.
jot down all the reasons, then we start to bucket them, then we're refining them. And then there's this question of, okay, I want you to sleep on this for 72 hours. Do you feel good? Why not? Yes, right? And pressure that. Um, because you can only test four things at once, right? When you have you have a 30-minute conversation with someone, you can't go 10 questions deep, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise they're going to feel like you're peppering them. But what are the four that you feel confident in? Take a moment, sleep on it. Do we want to iterate them at all? Let's go out and test. And there are some founders that have analysis paralysis where they can't hit go and they slow down the process. They're just getting in their own way, right? And the only way you learn is through experimenting. And the longer you're sitting on your hands, the more you're dying, right? If you're not learning, you're dying,
Mhm.
especially in
So
this
you
market.
have, yeah, it's true. And what do you do after that? So you go through the designing the experiment. And after
Yep.
that, what is next after that?
So I always suggest just doing one experiment with jellyfish is the start. You now need to continue this process to further refine. We're only doing this for 90 days, but as the founder, you should be running multiple experiments, right? When you raise your seed, right? Your entire seed round should be experiment after experiment, refinement after refinement, precision after precision. And I actually asked a question to the community because I don't know the answer to this. Is there a higher likelihood that a company will go off and raise a Series B, a Series C, a Series D if they spend more time in the seed stage experimenting, right? Because Series A is more about taking what works and now beginning to scale it and making it repeatable. But the seed stage is really about the refinement piece.
Mhm.
So if you spend more time in the seed, is that actually yield a higher likelihood of you lasting?
Got it.
It's an assumption. I don't know. But like it just all goes back to the point of running one experiment is not enough. And I tell founders that all of the time. You have to continually run experiments and continually question. And when things are validated, understand the why. Keep understanding the why. Because it's so easy to take any idea that you heard and then go off and execute on it. But again, anyone can do that. So the only way you can kind of build a competitive uh, positioning is continually questioning yourself in a
That's
healthy way.
interesting. I think when I was thinking about it, also like continuously questioning and going through it for the whole entire seed round before you refine and have something in place which you can actually take to the market and scale. But generally, founders and including anyone who raised a seed round start coming into both building and revenue pressure. So there is one a build pressure, like let's build, build, build. If we build, something would going to happen. That's something which one
Yep.
of the problems which founders have, which personally even I have seen. Second is also the revenue pressure. It's like whether it's put comes through from the investor or even from a natural founder. It's like, okay, if I'm raised money and if I'm doing this for 6 months or 12 months, I have to start showing some revenue because
Yep.
I have someone to answer to when other this thing.
Yep.
What are the mistakes which happen when founders go to either on building on the product side or going to revenue too early?
Yep.
Uh,
So regarding in specifically in the US market, there's a lot of founders that overbuild their product and then come into the US.
mhm,
And what happens is you go to market, the market cares about this. All of a sudden you show them this and they're like, well, this really wasn't built for me. I'd only use this. That's not really worth $50,000. I'd probably only use a tenth of what you built. Now all of a sudden you have an overbuilt product, a market that you've identified the problem, but now they don't see the value in what you built because it's overbuilt,
mhm.
right? And we see that a lot, right? Where the founders spent way too much time building and now they're not even flexible because this thing is there's so much cost that went into it. So one is when you come into the US market, give yourself some level of flexibility. Do not overbuild, right? You can always build down the line, right? And the other interesting thing is early adopters do not want a fully baked solution.
Okay,
Like there's a misconception. The late majority want a fully baked solution. Early adopters do not. Like I've never met an early adopter that's like, yeah, I'd use all of this. They're going to want to use a very small piece, gain an edge, and then widen from there. So
got it.
we support founders all the time that have this robust, put most of their funding into it, and then they come in and they're like, okay, let's go sell this for 100K. And I'm like, market would only use $10,000 of value from this, and you can't charge them 100K just because you overbuilt your product. So then
Got
there's this mismatch. Um, so that's one thing. Um, the second is,
it. Going to
when
revenue early.
the other is with revenue. Um, revenue is a lagging indicator of you running a successful experiment. So if you focus on experimenting, you will get the revenue like you did, right? Revenue just does not appear because you have a solution to sell. You have to be doing all of the right steps throughout the entire funnel to end up getting it, right? Like that's the
Got it.
product. So like, are you able to inspire the market? Gate check one. Does the market agree this is a problem? Gate check two. Do they want to solve it today? Gate check three. Is there an actual budget or who else is involved in paying for this? Gate check four. What other solutions are also out there to solve this to solve this problem? Gate check five. Do they believe you are the best solution out there for their need? gate check 6. So like you get through all of those before you can get to revenue. And yet so many people come into the US and are like, oh, we need to close, $500,000 in the next 6 months. And I'm like, you can't time box that.
Mhm.
Let alone, by the way, 100K is probably going to be a 6 to 9 month sales cycle to begin with. So, and again, they're taking inbound. This is another thing, founders mistake. They take an inbound lead and they assume that that sales cycle is equivalent to every other prospect. An outbound lead and an inbound lead are so radically different. I'm speaking to the expert on this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
An outbound lead takes twice as long to close.
Yeah. Actually, 3x, because
Next.
what we have seen in inbound, it's like you see someone come into your website, sign up, then it's the trial or a discussion before we actually get into a closure, which is like,
Yep.
let's say it takes 2 weeks.
Yep.
Outbound lead, when we have seen from the time when you actually reach out to them to the time they come to your website after that, to the time then they sign up for even a demo, that itself is 4 weeks. And
Yep.
then another 2 weeks after that, if it's going to happen. So I'm just putting weeks as the thing, but it's actually 3x the time at the minimum.
So, and again, when you come into the US, all you have is outbound. You don't have brand equity.
Mhm.
So they come here and they're like, oh, we need to close $500,000 in the next 6 months. And I'm like, but where is this, like, where is that insight? Like, where's that misconception coming from? And I think, honestly, it is all rooted in where we were for the last 2 years.
Got it. How has things changed in the last years? Because one thing is, of course, times have changed. That's
Yep.
something like, I mean, when we go back, we can talk about like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, post-pandemic.
Yep.
This like during the after the post 0% interest rates, etc.
Yeah.
What has changed in the market in terms of like, let's say you would have seen companies which should have reached, let's say, $1 million run rate during the 2021, 2022 times.
Yep.
But how does it change for companies to reach the same $1 million revenue in this times?
Yep.
Let's
So
say for a
one,
startup starting now.
yep. So one, when zero interest rates were a thing, you could throw money at everything, right? Throw it at 15 different experiments and see what works, right?
Hmm.
Um, people don't have those resources anymore. So now you have to you have to be very specific on the experiments you're running because there's a lot of leakage and just throwing money out there. So that's one. So being extremely, extremely diligent on what angle you're taking to run this. Two is it wasn't that impossible to growth hack 500,000 in ARR, right? Get
Hmm.
your buddies to use it, get your friends to use it, get the startups to use it. Yeah, sure, I'll throw you 15K. What does that matter? Sure, I'll show you 10 to all of a sudden that's gone. Right. So you
Hmm.
can't growth hack your way to 50K, $50,000 of ARR anymore. Like needs to be real money. And also VCs have smartened up to that and now are looking about how you got there. Where did these leads come from? Who are these customers? How did you source them? And the other is like employees are not empowered right now to go out and just buy tools, right? So product-led growth has now taken a hit with that, right? Users are not just allowed to just go out and just throw something on the credit card anymore. Everything is being audited. So unless you're providing extremely clear, specific value as to like how you're going to make them do their jobs better, it is much harder, let alone with all of the AI buzz going on, to get people to just use your product. And also we're seeing people go from users, like you can get away with a bunch of users. Now you need buyers, right? So
True.
like going from users to buyers.
PLG to the actual
Let's meet
sales
up.
motion.
Yeah. Product-led growth to product-led sales. Exactly. Whatever
Little,
product-led sales means, but
yes, little diversion, but since you mentioned it, and since you come from the sales world and
yep,
you come from the outbound sales world, which is basically total cold call, but to the right ideal customer
yep,
profile, and then explaining the product problem, and then taking them into the buying cycle, which is
yep.
there, compared to the PLG version of it. Uh, how does PLG plus the outbound sales both live together, or what is your opinion about PLG plus in this
Yeah.
current times?
So there's a lot of founders that wanted to do PLG because it was what was like the flavor of the month, right? Like you don't choose your go to market. No, you don't choose your go to market. Your customers actually choose what
Yes,
you end up
yes.
doing, right? So that's one. And we see a lot of companies that have deployed a product led growth motion because
Hmm.
that's what they wanted to deploy because they were allergic to sales, but that's not how their customers buy. They're not in search, right? Like they don't even know if this is a problem yet. Also, like it takes time, like this idea of organic growth of like, okay, if I get one of these people on, they'll invite 5 more of their teammates, right? You need approvals for that now. Like buyers, like your manager has to approve like team-wide tools now. Like that's a thing. Like people aren't just like deploying, all SaaS solutions, because it's a frenzy. Like you need to be solving something very specific. And sometimes it's just too late. Like you want to do product-led sales and you have 9 months of runway. Like that takes time to build. Like I said, to get to product market fit, you're thinking like 2 years. So to try and switch on a dime as a last resort, like that also doesn't work.
Nice. Actually, two different points from both the conversations. One in the first set where you said about like companies in the earlier stages can get, let's say, a couple of their friends and
Yep.
known community people and others, like 20 companies, 15K annual contract, 300K, you are getting into a certain amount of momentum, and VCs also see that momentum and then maybe pouring in money. That's something which has gone out of the wind now.
Yep.
Second is also, which is like maybe in earlier stages, companies might be of approval saying that, okay, I see 10 people using the product in my company, let's buy a team plan, do
Yep.
$500 a month or $1,000 a month. And that shows that PLG kind of growth, and people saying that, oh, we don't need marketing here. We don't need any kind of outbound salespeople. If people come and use it, eventually they'll become customers, that kind of equation. But both of those things are now getting constrained because the markets have changed. Like nobody's
Yep.
approving a team plan unless and unless it's really, really needed. Second, nobody's, even if it's friends, nobody's going to buy just because they are a friend, because they also don't have runway to just buy,
Yep.
which is there. But both these two things come to the next set of a problem which any founder would have. Because if I'm starting off as a founder now, the first set of customers or even the people who I'll get as design partners would be either from my friends or people who are I can know from my investor portfolio
Yep.
companies, which is there, or like it can be something like a PLG kind of a motion. And both these things are out of the way. How do I get my first set of paying customers? How do I make sure that they are paying customers if I'm an early stage founder?
Yep. So you absolutely can start with like your warm network, right? But you got to be careful learning from them, because if they're not truly your ideal customers, like how many people's warm network is truly their ideal customer?
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're the exception to the rule, like amazing, like go for it. But most people, their friends doing them a favor are not their actual ideal customers. So like just be like very aware of that and just honest with yourself. And if that is true, if they're willing to be a design partner, but they're maybe adjacent to the ICP, they're not really part of the ICP, then take their feedback very lightly. But you still need that proper feedback from the right group. So like go out and see if the market's even inspired to be a design partner. Right? Like there
Got
are
it.
people that want to do that. If the problem is real, if it's a hell yeah, I need to solve for this, getting a design partner is not going to be impossible. The problem is people are taking ideas, trying to build a go-to-market around it, and they are meh problems. They're like, yeah, okay, I get it. But like that response, that is a response. That is an answer. That is they're in like ambiguity about really the passion there. You don't get a product market fit based off of a market of ambiguity.
So does it make sense to say like don't, unless and otherwise you're doing colds outbound or finding your even design partners, your alpha partners, or any even the first customer who's willing to pay for you, don't get anyone on board unless and otherwise they are cold? Is that would be a right thing to
No,
say?
I mean, they just have to be your ICP. If you're trying to get design partners that are not in your ICP, like that's beware. That's all.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So just be very, very careful on how you onboard the particular client, whether they are actually
Who you
needing the
learn from.
product, who you learn from, and
Yeah.
other things. So now, let's say as an early stage customer, we have done the experiment, we have iterated towards this, and then we have also gone into the next stage where we have built the product for that particular thing. That also comes to the next stage of your sales process also, which you also consult on. So what
Yep.
do you do after that? Because before you hire an AE, founders make a lot of mistakes. I mean, I have personally known at least 10 founders who have let go of their first uh, AEs. And this is like 10 on 10. It's not even like 8 of the 10 did. The other two actually handled it. Unless and otherwise, it's a very close best buddy who couldn't be a co-founder, but he just became the first AE or something
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
Uh, they have let go of the AEs, they have not managed to find the right hire in this thing.
Yep.
So what is the next stage which you do when you actually bring in your first
Yep.
non-founder salesperson? What
Yep.
do you do before that?
So it goes founder-led sales, which is what we're talking about, to founder-led management. You are
Mhm.
still deeply involved. You need to make sure that the non-founder is successful, because if it's not, it's on you, right? So founder-led sales, when the first sales hire fails, it's never the salesperson's fault. The founder either hired them too soon, never gave them a process, or didn't manage them, right? So those are the three. And I always say, yes, founder-led sales, and you exit that around, around 1 million at ARR as a mental model. You're founder-led managing until 3 million ARR in the US, right?
Got it.
So if you think that a AE is going to be successful by themselves, you will be fooled, right? They need just as much management, just as much handholding, just as much process, just as much rigor. In fact, you're probably going to still be involved in almost every call, right? But your
Okay.
job is to start to take one step back. If they're good, take another step back. If they're good, take another step back. Like, your job is not to just delegate and let them take it over. Your job is to still manage the entire process.
That's
So,
interesting. Okay. I mean, since we work with other B2B SaaS companies, we have seen many companies move from 500K to 1 million to 2 million and other the thing. And then that's when, like, let's say when they just cross a million over is when the founder says that I have to hire a VP sales or a couple of AEs in
yep,
US and I have to move to US. I'm coming from
yep,
India, let's say from India to US, that kind of a movement which happens. And but how does it what I wasn't able to understand fully is like how does it's never the salesperson's problem, it's only the founder's problem
correct.
most of the cases,
So,
because it's like a founder feels like if the product sells for more than $1 million,
yep,
it's at least with, let's say if it's an average ACV of 20K, it's at least 50 customers, known proper paying customers in your ICP, totally cold, either who would have come from inbound. There is a huge inbound funnel. I also see pipeline for another 500,000 or even a 1 million,
yep,
because time taken for me to the first million versus the next million is going to be almost half or less than half,
yep,
which is there. So he feels very, very confident that anyone who has a sales experience into
yep.
this industry should be able to do it. But where does it go wrong? I mean, where am I getting this wrong? I'm
Yeah,
not able.
so where it goes wrong is, I think, the last 2 years, which is where it was like, go out and hire a sales team, do it quickly. Like, those are
Mhm.
gone. Like, everyone needs to be extremely methodical and run a math model to understand when to hire. So first is, can you even feed them? Like,
Mhm.
is there so much work that the founder is dropping deals because there's so much in demand? Great. Now you know you're ready to hire someone, right? Are they able to feed themselves? Okay,
Mhm.
are they dropping deals because they're so booked? Great, now you need to hire another one. So, like, it's just a math equation that was
Mhm.
thrown out the window. In fact, product market fit was thrown out the window in the last 2 years of this, investing
Craziness.
cycle, momentum investing cycle. Yes. So I would say, like, what was done in the last 2 years is completely the wrong way to do it now, right? You need to hire slow, right? You
Mhm.
need to make sure that everything is being methodical, that there is a rationale to every decision you are making, right? That they are able to hit quota based off of the price you know,
Great.
in the early days it's hard because you're still building the machine. So, they might return maybe 2x their OT, 2x their cost.
Cost.
But by the time you are, into your series A into series B, they should be returning 5x their cost, right? That's like the holy grail um of
General
like,
sales hiring.
yes.
Yeah.
But, you know, it all comes down to the feast. Do you have, like, is there enough food to go around? Are they able to do it? Is the process working? Is the founder still deeply involved? As soon as you have 3 or 4 people that are being successful, now you're ready to hire a VP of sales. Okay.
Got it.
VP of sales truly comes in between series A and series B.
Okay.
Right? And so many people hired a VP of sales at the seed stage, which makes no sense to me. But who are they VPing? Like, who are they managing?
And is it even when you hire a VP sales? I think you made a slight point where like what you would suggest is like hire a couple of AEs or start with one AE or two AEs, see whether they're able to get enough deals, and then they're dropping, and then hire the VP, or is it
Yes.
vice
If
versa?
2 AEs can't be successful, a VP of sales is not going to do anything for you. A VP of sales is there to build and manage a team. If you can't get 2 AEs being fed and being successful in the role, then there's something else that's broken. Um,
Got it. And how do you hire a good AE? That's something which
Yeah.
most of the founders also go through, like in US as a
Yep.
market to be successful. What are the best characteristics of an AE
Yep.
which you go through?
So it depends on what the go-to-market motion is. Is it an education-led sale? Is it a transactional sale? Is it a $30,000 deal? Is it a $150,000 deal? So there is some nuance in terms of what type of hire to make based off of those inputs. I always suggest, I say, listen, you want to poach, right? Like the best salespeople are not on the market, right? Like they are making so much money elsewhere, and that's the type of person you want. You also probably want to take that person where they've been in the role, they've probably been a first sales hire elsewhere, right? Maybe they've been in the role for 2 or 3 years, and like what they love about navigating ambiguity, maybe it's more process oriented now, and now could be a good time to poach them. So I'm probably one step ahead of where the startup is right now. Never ever hire anyone late stage or at a mature organization if you are in the early days. It's like oil and water.
So it's like look for hungry people or look for people who are doing exceptionally well, and
Look for people that
also
know how
people
to
who are
navigate ambiguity.
ambiguity navigation, which is there. Any interview traits, any specific questions which you ask from interviews or something which you do in this?
Why do you want to join an early stage company?
Anyone
There's
should be
so much
crazy to
risk,
do it.
so much unknown. Like what do they say? Like that's usually very telling. And then the other piece is where do you want to take your sales career? Do you want to be an IC or do you want to go be a VP of sales and manage? Right. And if they say VP of sales and manage, I always am like, you want someone that's a true IC and loves the sales work.
Being an ST.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. One other thing, before the last set of
Yeah.
technical questions which we ask is like, where does marketing come into play from a seed stage
Yep.
company to the Series A, and how does the marketing and sales team interact? So,
Yep.
given that you would have worked with
Yep. So
SaaS companies.
there's two types of ways to think about it, right? Are you a sales led go to market or are you a marketing led go to market? Right. And that comes down to the size of the deal, who you're selling to, and just the market maturity around the problems you're solving. Right. So irrespective if you're sales led, marketing led, product led, let's just like take a step back because some people don't even know just yet. Can you, as the founder, inspire the market to a conversation? And can you understand what they're facing? Nothing else matters unless you're able to do that. Then the question becomes is, okay, based off of this insight, are we selling something that they're very aware of? Are we selling something that they're actively in search for? Are we selling something that they have experience in and they've tried to solve this? Right. And do we have a budget to truly market to them in a way that's going to fuel our uh, our business model?
Got it.
Marketing is great once you've isolated the very specific problems you are solving and how to inspire them and understanding where they are. So many people want to go out and market, but they don't even understand where their ideal customers are, what they read, what conferences they go to, how they engage, what type of content they want to engage with. So I always say founder-led sales comes before anything else. So if you can't get founder-led sales right, like it doesn't matter if you're going to be sales-led or marketing-led. That's the first chapter.
So once the founder is clear on what to do, then later both from a marketing angle and from a sales angle, all other things fall in place,
Yes,
is what you
correct.
would say.
Yep.
In this thing, is there any what are the kind of, like, you also talked about, like when you hire a salesperson or when you work with the market, or even whether how you invest in marketing or not depends on the size of the deals.
Yep.
Whether it's like, let's say if I put it in two buckets, deals which are like 20K
Yep.
and 15 to 25K average,
Yep.
which is there, and deals which are like, let's say 150K to 200K.
Yep.
What are the differences? Because of course, obviously one is the deal cycle, but what other things change in terms as a
Yep.
company, as a process?
Yep. So I think one is just the maturity around the problem. If they're still need to be educated on it, they're not in search for it. So marketing's not going to really, you
Work.
need someone to educate them. Also, price is dictated on the effort it takes to close these deals, right? Like if it takes a salesperson and someone navigating procurement, you've got to sell a greater than a $50,000 deal, right? If you're able to get them signed up in 2 calls, right, and it's much more of a transactional sale, like marketing is probably going to play a much bigger role than sales, right? So it just depends on like where the market is and the effort it takes to get these deals done. Like you can't build a 500-person sales org on a $1,200 a year sale unless your velocity is like thousands a day, right?
Got
And that's okay. Then that works. But like that means you need that inbound to fuel that because no one's going outbound to 1,200 companies a day. So it also depends on the velocity you need. So marketing and sales, I think, are like counterbalances. One of them is always leading. Are you a
Mhm.
marketing led business, which is like product led, community led, marketing led, or are you truly a sales, human intervention led business?
Got it. And the human intervention part or the amount of human intervention is what that would change your
Yeah. And then sales is leading.
focus.
Yeah. There's always
Yes.
one. You never have a marketing and a sales led organization. They would be in conflict with each other.
That's good.
Who
I
starts?
mean, Jen, this has been a whole lot of things to consume, even for me personally, because as you were talking, I started, I mean, it went beyond my research as well. So I started thinking, like, oh, did I look into this, or is this
Yeah.
something which I need to go back? And I think this would be a huge amount of things to consume for some of our viewers as well.
Well,
And
sorry.
that's
I'm so passionate about this. So I apologize if I went too far deep.
no. It was very, very exciting, and I think the nuggets of wisdom actually comes as you mentioned, like when you go deep, and there is this wedge, and maybe that's what would make or break a good
Yeah.
conversation itself in
Yeah.
this kind for people to invest in. Uh, Away from the serious questions
Yeah.
and a little more the last set of questions, what are the kind of SaaS companies or startups which you admire, which you have worked with in the past, or even not worked with in the past in the last couple of years, where you see like they went through the whole right from the time of designing the experiment, right from the time of asking the right questions, right from the time of starting to scale up and then build up and this thing, they did
Yep.
it right or they almost did. Of course, it can be a second or third time founder as well.
Yep.
But which are the kind of SaaS companies, if you can share, which you
Yeah.
really like, so that we can also see whether we can copy
Yeah.
the playbooks?
Big fan of Atlan.
Oh, yes.
Prukalpa. She was our first Indian startup that we worked with.
Nice.
Um, just super rigorous, super methodical. There was no guessing or throwing anything. It was like very like process driven. She's remarkable and is just building a great brand for herself as well, personal and business brand. So Outland is one that I think has done a great job. Again, super deep product that they've made very easy to understand, right?
Yeah.
Like
Actually,
um,
yes. When I spoke to Prakalpa also, she was one of the reasons what I asked her, like what she got of the Jellyfish assignment. She was like,
yeah,
oh, we invalidated that BFSI doesn't work for us. So we have to go out of BFSI
yeah.
and this thing. And that really helped us. And that was something like, it was like, oh, is it? Oh, that's all. You didn't get any deals or something of the sort. But it makes a lot of sense now after a couple of years why something like that is so
Yeah.
important.
And also but I think as a second or third time founder, she knew the importance of questioning versus going out and pretending to know. And that's rare. You don't get that all the time. So Outland is definitely one of them because she understands what it takes to get to product market fit, the time it takes, how hard it is. Like she is a great, I think a great example. Other folks, some folks are just not far enough along yet. Like it's still kind of very early days. I'm just trying to think of other a company called Pursuit. They're in the legal tech space.
Yes.
They're pretty well known at this point.
Australia based.
Australia based, yep. Again, like came in with a very vertical, like he was a lawyer. He understood his market so well and understood like problems and just going super deep there. And owns one very, very specific part of the value chain. Didn't go here, went here day one, right? So just very specific in terms of the problems they're solving. So like those two, again, it all came down to specificity, invalidating their own vision, getting out of their own A, removing their own bias, and really, really listening to the market.
That's right. And also, since you work with a lot of India-based companies also, because, and I mean, we are 20% of the world's population, maybe 30,
Yeah.
40% of the world's SaaS companies. So there would be a lot of Indian SaaS companies which are trying to break into the US market. What are the kind of biases they come with and the normal set of biases they come with, which they needn't have, which is there? And also, what are the things which, what are the kind of key mistakes which they do, so that
Yep.
when we share to the audience also, we can just talk
Yeah.
about that.
So there's three big ones. One is they think the US market moves at some crazy speed, right? They're like, oh, we need to close this deal in 3 to 6 months. Like a true enterprise deal takes 9 to 12 months, right? Like truly. The second is just the headwinds they're going to face not being a US known brand equity business. Like there are hundreds of thousands of alternatives out there. They are no different than anyone else. Right? And they don't come in with this level of specificity and rigor because they're unique in their local market, but when they come into the US, there's 50 companies doing something similar. Right? So just like that lack of the importance of being specific, they usually miss. And then the third is they move here without really validating anything and then wandering. They put down their suitcase in San Francisco and just wander around meeting to meeting. And then
So
they come.
that's something I have to tell my fellow founders in India, like, don't do all these three things for sure and
Yeah.
come back on this.
Yeah.
How much is it like one other thing which also one bias, I'm not sure whether it's a bias or whether it's a fact. I mean, founders in India say that, okay, we won't be able to sell in US unless and otherwise we have a US salesperson.
Yep.
As an Indian, you can't be
Um,
able to sell. Is that true or is that
no,
still
that's not
hold?
true because a founder should be able to inspire and excite the market more than I don't care if you're US or India based. Like a founder is a very coveted conversation that people are excited to learn from. Like, you know, something I don't know. I want to learn from you. Right.
Got
And
it.
founder led selling is a competitive advantage that people don't take advantage of. Okay. Hold on to it as long as you responsibly can.
Got it. Last two questions,
Yep.
absolutely last two questions. One is like, what are the kind of either sales podcasts or early stage conversations or even books which you would
Yep.
recommend founders to read
Yeah.
before?
Love the mom test. I can't recommend that book enough. That's all about like removing bias both from what you're hearing and what you're saying. Um Founder Led Sales by Pete Kaczynski. I think I'm pronouncing his name it talks through all of the methodologies we're talking to. It's a great book. Um uh Podcasts. Trying to think. I don't know if I listen to any sales podcasts. I try and listen to things that are outside of that just to
Okay.
learn other ways of thinking. Like I love Invest Like the Best, which is I'm blanking on his name, but it's a great podcast where he interviews business owners about like business models and like the ways they're innovating, and that's really interesting. He interviewed he's interviewed some really impressive folks in the tech space. What else do I love and listen to? Everything else kind of it's like everyone starts to sound the same, you know.
Yes.
But those two books I can't recommend high enough. And then Steve Blank, of course, like reading his blog posts and Paula Graham's blog posts, right? They are the experts of like what it really takes to build a business. They didn't build this vision in the last 2 years. They've been building this for decades, and like those
Got it.
things hold true.
Got it.
Um,
That's
yeah,
great. I mean, that's quite a handful for us to also
yeah.
even go back and check it up and this thing. Lastly, where do we find you? Which is the best place to find you?
I am super responsive on Twitter. I absolutely love that platform. So my DMs are open. Um, that's where I'm mostly engaged and where I spend most of my time when I'm not
Nice.
obviously working.
Working.
Yeah,
That's great. Thanks a lot, Jen,
this was
for
awesome.
all this wisdom. It was great talking to you, and hopefully meet you in person next time when you are in India or when we come to US.
I would love that. All
Awesome.
right, my friend.
Thanks.
Bye
Thanks a
bye.
lot. Bye. And